Trump has taken a remarkably soft stance on Taiwan. Since late July, he's imposed a 20% tariff on Taiwan, barred Taiwan's President Lai Ching-te from a layover in New York at Beijing's request, and suggested allowing exports of previously banned microchips from Taiwan to China in return for 15% of the sales revenue. This has heightened concerns in both Washington and Taiwan itself that Trump might be ditching Taiwan in order to get a trade deal with China. So in this video, we'll explain the US's policy towards Taiwan and what might be motivating Trump's recent shift. In the latest issue of our magazine, Too Long, we dive deep into the current state of America, discussing our real thoughts on the state of American democracy, soft power, universities, and the countries that could steal their crown, from China to the EU. Find out more about Too Long, the End of the American Order, by clicking the link in the description. First, some context. Since the US officially recognised the People's Republic of China in 1979, the US's Taiwan policy has been defined by the Taiwan Relations Act, or TRA, which uses deliberately vague language indicating a possible, but not guaranteed, US commitment to defend Taiwan, a stance generally known as strategic ambiguity. Specifically, the US, quote, maintains the capacity to resist any resort to force or other forms of coercion that would jeopardize the security or the social or economic system of the people on Taiwan. However, different US presidents have held different interpretations of what strategic ambiguity actually means. Biden, for instance, was very forward-leaning on the issue, saying explicitly on multiple occasions that the US would indeed defend Taiwan from a Chinese invasion, and even comparing America's duty to defend Taiwan to NATO's Article 5. Trump's Taiwan policy, meanwhile, seems to have changed between his first and second terms. After his election victory in December 2016, Trump held a direct phone call with Taiwan's then-president Tsai Ing-wen, surrounded himself with so-called China hawks, and signed the Taiwan Travel Act, allowing US officials of all levels to travel to Taiwan, provoking a fair bit of irritation in Beijing. In August 2020, just a few months before the election, Trump sent Health Secretary Alex Azar to the island, the highest-level visit by a US official in decades. Trump also escalated arms sales to Taiwan throughout his first term, culminating in an $8 billion package including 66 upgraded F-16 fighter jets in late 2019, which provoked retaliatory sanctions from Beijing against US arms companies. Trump's tough China policy, meanwhile, was marked by tariffs, sanctions, and further restrictions on Chinese tech firms. However, in his second term, Trump's support of Taiwan has apparently softened. During the 2024 US election campaign, Trump had a go at Taiwan for apparently stealing America's chip business, and suggested that they should pay for their own defense. Trump took things up a notch earlier this year, when he said he'd impose a 100% tariff on Taiwan's chip exports to the US, before imposing a 20% flat tariff on Taiwan last month. Unsurprisingly, concerns have risen about the US's defense commitment to Taiwan, as reflected in recent polls. A survey by the Brookings Institute in April found that 40.5% of Taiwanese respondents had either a very negative or negative perception of the US, up from around 24% in July 2024. Similarly, only 37.5% of respondents said that they thought it was likely or very likely that the US would intervene in a conflict with China, down from 44.5% in July 2024. But this all raises the question: why is Trump apparently ditching Taiwan? Well, the main reason is probably Trump's desire for a trade deal with China. The brief tit-for-tat trade war we saw between the US and China after Liberation Day exposed both that China has more leverage over the US than many commentators first assumed, and that getting a trade deal wouldn't be as easy as Trump thought it would. Since then, concerns have emerged that Trump may be prepared to sell out Taiwan in exchange for a more favourable trade deal with China, having stated repeatedly that he wants a meeting with Xi and a deal. The second reason why Trump seems to be ditching Taiwan is his insistence on balanced trade. Trump's economic policy involves imposing tariffs on countries that the US has a trade deficit with, in other words, which export more to the US than the US exports to them. Last year, the US's trade deficit with Taiwan rose by 54% to $73 billion, moving Taiwan up one spot to become the US's seventh largest trading partner. This was largely driven by demand for electronics, automated data processing equipment, and computer parts. And in the first 6 months of this year, Taiwan's exports to the US hit a record high. Trump doesn't like this imbalance, having last year accused Taiwan of stealing US chip business, saying they did take about 100% of our chip business. For clarity, Taiwan produces about 92% of the world's advanced microchips. Last month, Trump imposed a 20% tariff on Taiwan, lower than the 32% originally proposed in April, but still higher than the 15% imposed on Taiwan's neighbours, Japan and South Korea. While Taiwanese President Lai Ching-te said the tariff is temporary and that Taiwan is negotiating a more favourable rate, with the two sides reportedly close to a final agreement, the tariff was nevertheless interpreted as yet more evidence of Trump's fickleness towards Taiwan. Last week, the US also revoked the Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company's authorization to export US chip-making tools to China without a license, effectively undermining trade between Taiwan and China to encourage TSMC to manufacture more in the US. The third reason, and the most relevant to Taiwan's security situation, is Trump's frustration with what he views as Taiwanese free-riding. In July 2024, Trump said, "Taiwan should pay us for defense. You know, we're no different from an insurance company. Taiwan doesn't give us anything." This isn't really true. In fact, as mandated by the TRA, Taiwan relies almost exclusively on the US for arms sales. Nonetheless, Trump's got a point insofar as Taiwan hasn't spent very much on its own defence in recent years. Or at least not as much as you might expect from an island facing imminent invasion, hovering between 1.5 and 2.5% of GDP. This is why the Trump administration asked Taiwan in March to increase its defence spending to 10% of GDP. And while this isn't realistic, Taiwan has since pledged to increase defence spending to over 3% of GDP in the coming years. Finally, the fourth reason Trump may be turning his back on Taiwan is his isolationist foreign policy. While his foreign policy hasn't been wholly consistent on this point, Trump has in the past suggested he wants to keep the US out of future foreign conflicts. Nor does Trump seem too stressed about it. In August, Trump claimed that Xi told him China wouldn't invade Taiwan while he was in office. Hopefully, he's right. It's no secret that problem solving is always found at the heart of politics, whether that's through making important decisions or just understanding how the world works. Here at TLDR, we want to stay on top of our problem solving too, so that's why we use Brilliant. Brilliant is an incredibly comprehensive online learning platform that helps you become a better thinker and problem solver, designed specifically to teach you everything from maths, data analysis, programming, and AI from the ground up. You don't need a fancy degree or to have dedicated hundreds of hours to studying, as Brilliant gets you stuck in at the perfect level, allowing you to first start with mastering the foundations, then helps you level up to increasingly challenging problems. Take their fantastic data courses, for example. Whether you're starting fresh or continuing your learning journey, Brilliant offers everything from basics, like data visualizations, to advanced topics like algorithms and regression models.